Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW Repairs and Information. Well, is this the end of the road for the 650 with its N62 engine? Has the valve stem seals eventually given up even after all those oil changes and sometimes using some oil treatments as well? I mean, just have a look at that smoke. I mean, that is absolutely terrible, isn't it? It's a huge amount of engine smoke. Yeah, it's not steam. I can't say it's steam. That is definitely engine oil burning up rather badly. Yeah, that's not a sight you want to see. And most people would say, well, that's the end of the car. Some people will pay the 800 quid. Yeah, it's getting a lot cheaper to do valve stem seals now. It used to be a couple of grand at the very least, but now you can get it done for about 800 quid, $1,000. They're getting a darn sight more efficient at doing it, that's for sure. So 800 quid, still a lot of money. Is it worth doing this car? Is it really worth 800 quid and whatever else gets scratched or broken, as everything always does when these sort of jobs are done? Is it the road for this 650i? The answer is no. No, not at all. So that video was taken, well, we can see the date actually on the video, and today I'm driving the car for the second week since it's been off the road, and I've got no smoke at all, nothing in the rear view mirror, nothing in the security cameras when I pull off from to go to work in the mornings. Yep, everything's looking fine. So what was this all about, and what have I done to the car in the intervening period to get it back to the condition it is now, which I've got no smoke at all, no engine problems whatever. It's just as strong and powerful, quiet and clean as it ever was. So how did I get from the transition of having all that smoke coming out of it, 100% definite valve stem seals, and today driving it quite happily with no smoke at all? Well, I'm going to tell you the whole story, and hopefully it'll put a few people's minds to rest if they have exactly the same problems. Now, in the UK last year, coming up to the end of last year, we went into full lockdown again. Serious lockdown, so you could only go to work if it was very important. There are very high cases of the virus around where I live. Very high indeed. And this car's MOT came up. 650i, in the UK we have an MOT every year. You can't use the car unless it's MOT'd. The insurance is invalid if the car's not MOT'd. And so I came to a decision that, well, is it worth taking this car to a garage to get it MOT'd with all the chances of picking up the virus, especially in an area which has got such high cases, when I've got other cars I can drive if I want to? I've got the 8 Series and I've got my wife's Mini to go to work in if I really need to. So the decision was, no, just leave the car in the drive, and when lockdown's over, and it'll probably be about another month before lockdown is over, then we'll get the car MOT'd. Okay, that's fine. Left it there for a couple of months, and rather than driving it anywhere, I did a couple of videos. We did the videos on IMPA, where we diagnosed the engine, we diagnosed the gearbox and stuff like that. Now what that entailed, even though the videos last probably about 20 minutes each, actually involved the car sitting there just ticking over in the drive for a very long time. 3 or 4 hours it was in total. Now, unfortunately, just ticking over with an N62 is not a great plan. They really don't like it. Now, let me explain what the problem is. Well, the problem's all down to the crankcase ventilation system. Now, we're quite used to them on the M62, the V8, which was in the E32, E38, E39s. We know they have problems, and they cause a lot of angst to a lot of people because those V8s gave off a lot of smoke, when the PCV valve failed, which was the initial problems we had with them, and it was worried that the car actually had Nicosil problems. Oh, excuse me, I have to get out of here. Nothing in the wing there, no smoke, no nothing. Lovely. So glad to be driving the 650. It's such a fast car, it really is. But yeah, okay, so where was I? Yeah, N62, always had smoking problems. Pressure control valve to start with, they used to split. And later on in the E38's life, the oil separator valve started to have problems as well. It's because people didn't do any oil changes with them, because the E38 and E39 were perceived of having very low prices, and though they're sort of end of life sort of situation, no one changed the oil separator valve blocked up, and yeah, and it's a really big job to change that, because it requires removing the timing chain covers and the big Jesus bolt and a lot of other messing about. So they were generally scrapped or left just to smoke, as quite a lot of them were. But yeah, we move on to the N62, and how much did the Germans learn about crankcase ventilation systems? Nothing. Nothing at all. No, it had exactly the same problems, I'm afraid. It was thought of as a better idea. The actual oil separator valves are built into the valve covers, so they've got a labyrinth in there which separates the dirty gases into clear gases and oil, and the oil returns back to the crankcase. And the pressure control valve was actually part of the valve cover as well, so it's all one complete unit. It's quite clever, and the pipe went off to the inlet manifold to get into the manifold and to slurp the gases out of the crankcase, because of course these have got negative crankcase ventilation systems where we have a slight vacuum within the crankcase of a few millibars, not much at all, and that's all controlled by the pressure control valves. Anyway, I'm getting off the point and I'm going up a no through road, so we'll go back round again. Yeah, there. So yeah, that was fine. It suffered now and again from the same problems as the M62, with a little bit of smoking because the PCVs cracked or they got blocked up, and that caused another problem with the PCVs in the valve covers. That's in extreme weather conditions, they'd freeze up, and then you'd get, instead of a little bit of smoking, you'd get catastrophic engine failure. Yeah, the crankcase would actually split. It wasn't pretty at all. So they moved the PCV off of the valve cover on one side only, put it in its own little housing with a foam rubber around it. And the reason they did that is so that that was insulated from the weather, it didn't get blocked up. There you go, job done, hunky-dory. Nah, afraid not. Unfortunately, what does happen is that it isn't heated up by the engine anymore. You don't get the heat from the cylinder heads going into them, and unfortunately things started to congeal in them. So I mean, you get a bit of moisture in any crankcase, and that moisture's within the gases, the dirty gases. The oil separators in the valve covers were separated out, but some of it would still be present, and you end up with gunk in all the pipe work for the pressure control valve system, crankcase ventilation system. That's fine most of the time, but unfortunately this means that it does fail at some point. Ooh, armoured personnel carrier there. I thought I heard one this morning. You could tell them by that pre-selector gearbox. The fantastic noise. Good to hear them again. I'm getting off the point. Anyway, problems occurred with that system as well. They get gunked up, and usually a bit of oil you burn, it doesn't really matter. You don't notice it. Gets burnt, pops out the exhaust pipe. You don't see much smoke because it's just such a tiny amount of oil. Problem is, if you leave it on the drive sitting idling for 3 or 4 hours, you slowly build up oil in the inlet manifold. That, combined with the fact with the actual idle speeds controlled by valve lift rather than throttle body control means the vacuum in the inlet manifold is absolutely feeble. It's absolutely hopeless. And so we get very bad separation of oil from the dirty gases, and it doesn't return to the crankcase. It gets into the inlet manifold, and if you're not driving, it will just sit in there. Now, when you're driving the car, like I am today, if there's any oil in the manifold at all, it's being slurped out, it's being burnt. No one's any the wiser. You don't see any smoke because it's such a small amount. But leave it idling for 3 or 4 hours and you build up a whole lot of oil in the inlet manifold. And so that time it was smoking, that was the first time it actually moved in a long time. And that was the MOT guy, motorcyclist, deciding to change lane halfway round. Very good, we don't mind that. Yep, so that was coming back from the MOT, and the MOT station's a couple of miles away, so it doesn't really get a chance to do anything. Anyway, so yeah, while I'm driving the car, any oil that gets past the crankcase ventilation system is just getting burnt. I'm going around corners, any sort of liquid oil in the bottom of the manifold sloshes around, ends up in the cylinder, off it goes and gets burnt. Unfortunately, sitting the drive for 3 or 4 hours, you just end up with a lot of oil in the manifold, and that's very unfortunate, and it does mean that it gets burnt off, and it's quite noticeable when it gets burnt off because there's so much of it. So the first time, there's an E28. I wonder if I can keep up with that. Nice to see that. Where's he gone? There he goes. Ah, he's lovely. I do like an E28. Had one of those. It's lovely. Yeah, nice to see an E28. Very few of them on the roads. First time I've seen one on the road for many years. Yep, so there we go. So we've now got to a point where the car's smoking away, so I thought, right, it's got its MOT, I'm going to use it to go to work. If it's valve stem seals that have failed, fair enough. But 518, yeah, 518, exactly the same as my one, apart from my one's red and a bit younger than that. Yeah, and the exhaust pipe looked the same, always too low. No, lovely car. Smells like it as well. You can actually smell the difference with the old M10 engine in that. Of course, it's only a 4-pot. Lovely car. I love the shape of those. They're fantastic looking cars. Anyway, I used the car to go to work and back, gave it a good thrashing. That's what it needs. And after a good thrashing, no problems at all. No problems ever since. So it was just that build-up of oil in the crankcase. And now we're in a situation where we're back to where we were again. It wasn't the valve stem seals. It's unfortunately the limitations of the crankcase ventilation system. And the only reason I've done this video is that if you have exactly the same problems with all lots of smoke burning, if it's been ticking over, don't worry, N62s do this, I'm afraid. The crankcase ventilation isn't perfect. It doesn't work very well. And at idle, it just lets oil through to the manifold. So don't panic about it. It might be that when the car was new, it didn't used to do this. I doubt if it did, but once you've got a bit of gunk in the valve covers, that's it. They're going to let a bit of oil through at idle, because the manifold vacuum is just minuscule. It really is. Anyway, that's the whole reason for the video. If you were worried and had the same situation, don't worry, perfectly normal. The car's lovely again. I'm really enjoying driving it. It's a fantastic car to drive, and it's fantastic to see an E28. I do love them. Ooh, he's going down there, down Forest Road. What else has he got on it? Lovely. Oh, it's nice to see an E28, isn't it? Look at that. Beautiful. He's got a deep dish alloys on it as well. That's strange. Anyway, oh yeah, we got an almost across the thingy one there. Almost decided to pull out in front of me, changed his mind. Anyway, quite a nice drive that was. All sorts of things to see. It's just lovely to drive the 650, it really is. And all that power, I mean, it is lovely, isn't it? The amount of power in a 650, you can't use it half the time, but when you can, isn't that nice? Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for all the comments. I love reading the comments. And I'll see you next time. Almost home. Yeah, lockdown and people still going out. It does worry you a bit.